our speaker. Jay Pastucha is the executive director at the Oil Lamp Theater in Glenview. It is a professional nonprofit theater dedicated to presenting traditional theater in a unique venue. Jay took the reins at Oil Lamp in March of 2020. Great time to be joining something, if you'll recall. And kept the ship afloat throughout the pandemic, even daringly moving a production outdoors under the stars, which helped provide some live theater for the audiences who needed it, because we had that long dry spell where we couldn't do it. Jay holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Central Florida. And now he'll tell us about this little gem of a theater that exists. Jay?
Thank you very much. Hello and good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Hi. So can I just see a show of hands? Who here has been to Oil Lamp Theater before? All right. Who here has never even heard of it before? All right. We have a little bit of everything. So something about us is we like to call ourselves, well, we've been dubbed by TripAdvisor as the hidden gem of the North Shore. I'm not the biggest fan of the word hidden in that. So hopefully by the end of today, we won't be as hidden. How's this microphone working? Is it pretty good? All right. So it is a pleasure to speak to you today. I'm going to run through this and talk a little bit about our backstory, who we are, where we came from, what it takes to put on a production, the ins and outs of all of that, as well as what happens behind the scenes a little bit. Then I'll leave you with what's coming up down the pike. So a little bit about us. We are a 60-seat storefront theater in the suburbs, which is very unusual. Normally you find that iconic storefront theater inside the Chicago city limits, but we're out here in Glenview, just at the crossroads of Waukegan and Glenview Road. We have a main stage season, which has over 200 performances each year for over 10,000 audience members. We also have our speakeasy nights where we bring in a mixologist who makes craft cocktails. And we have stand-up comedy, storytelling, live music. And we do those in between that. We also have our Women on Wednesdays series, which our next one's coming up on April 17th. It's an empowerment series to get women together and share stories. And we have specific speakers for those events as well. So we stay very busy, very active with only 60 seats. And we have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. So keep that in mind as we go through all of this that we put together each year. So our mission, something that we value very, very near and dear to our hearts, is that Oil Lamp Theater provides a grand theatrical experience in an intimate space by fostering connection, broadening horizons, and shining a light on the human condition. All of those elements you'll find in every bit of our productions. And when we go and we look at anything we're doing, we have to tie it back to our mission. And does it honor that? But a little bit about us. Before we moved out here in 2012, we were actually founded in an apartment in Lakeview in Chicago. So the theater itself was in the living room, and the audiences watched from the dining room. So we make it feel very much like home when you walk through our doors. For those of you who have been there, does it feel a little bit like home when you walk through the doors? Hopefully, because we also offer complimentary chocolate chip cookies with all of our main stage shows. So we kept that essence alive to make sure that everyone feels welcome, everyone feels valued and a part of something greater. So with that, we're only 60 seats, but we've been winning awards for the last couple of years. We won Best Live Theater in the North Shore 5 out of 6 years. 1 year was COVID, and then the years after that, they stopped doing those awards because the newspaper collapsed. Sorry, COVID. Outside of that, we have some Broadway World Awards and fun things like that. Best Production of the Year. That was our outdoor season. We had Shipwrecked and Entertainment, which did great. We also had some great things last year coming from our first musical that we've ever done in our space with 60 seats and 14-foot wide stage with no wings. Musicals are very hard to do, but we figured out a solution to that and are starting to do those with our seasons moving forward. So, who has a background in the arts here? Anyone have a background in the performing arts at all? All right, we have one, we have two. All right, so I'm going to delve into what goes into a production with Oil Lamp Theater, just starting from just the basics and all of that. We'll go from there. So we start by selecting our scripts and our shows for a season, probably 1 to 3 years out. We read dozens and dozens of scripts every year, and we have collections of hundreds and hundreds of scripts that we've already read, and we try to piece together a season that fits together, molds together, into something that is cohesive but unique and different and exciting and makes people want to come out and makes people want to celebrate and think and laugh. So it's a very interesting process, and it takes a long time to get started on that. So questions we ask ourselves when we're looking at a script. And our artistic director, Elizabeth Mazer-Levin, she has very specific questions she asks as we go through our selection process. And the biggest one out of all of this, if you can see right here, is the bottom left, why now? Now, we all have scripts that we love and we dream of doing one day, but why is this script so important to tell now? Does it push us artistically? Does it push us as a community? Does it bring us together? There's a lot of interesting questions when it goes into selecting a script. Also, will it sell? Well, do I like it, but no one else is going to want to come and see it? It's very interesting to think about the formula that goes into selecting a show, selecting a season. Any questions about that? They're all on the board. I get it. All right, so moving on from there, our next stage that we do is we look to hire our production personnel. So everyone who's going to be on our team artistically guiding this show. So we start off with two primary positions. We start off with our directors, who is going to be there, leading the charge. They're in charge of everything from top to bottom artistically. They work with the designers to get what they want. It's their vision of whatever the script we hand them. So it's very important we get them on board early and have a strong leader there. And we also have a stage manager, which this is not a true stage manager because there's no pictures of stage managers. Normally, they're normally dressed in black and behind stage. This just happens to be the stage manager actor in our production of 2022, It's a Wonderful Life right there. But they are very important of keeping everyone organized and on top of it. And then when it gets time for the show, making sure the show keeps running smoothly. So other positions that we have to think about and we have to also go in and hire. We have to figure out costumes because without them, you end up looking like that with hardly anything on. Our properties or props, everything from teacups to mirrors to anything that an actor is going to use and manipulate on stage that is not fixed or is not considered a costume is what a prop is. Lighting. With our space, it's very interesting, very unique. There's a lot of limitations, so we have to find people who are really, really creative when it comes to lighting our space. And then scenic design. They do everything from the ceiling down to the floor and making it look as beautiful and captivating as possible. And then we delve into the other positions that we need that are more show specific. Puppetry. This is our puppet from Frankenstein in 2022. This was a 7-foot puppet that stood on the shoulders of an actor, and they had to manipulate them. It was fantastic. You can't really tell here, but right inside that chest cavity, that's where their head was. And I will be honest, that is in our storage, and every time I go to a storage, it scares me so much. Wigs, that's definitely wigs and makeup. This is Marie Antoinette right here from our production last year of The Revolutionists. We have intimacy. So just like you'll have like a fight coordinator, you also have intimacy. So everything down to the hair touch, everything like that needs to be choreographed for safety. Music direction for musicals and plays with music. It's also very important. And sound designers. Speaking as someone who also dabbles in sound design on the side, I should have put them on here earlier. They're very important. And then choreography. So we need a choreographer for a lot of different reasons. So those are just a few of the positions we have to hire and do everything from 6 months, 12 months out. Now we have our team assembled, we're ready to go, and we need actors, right? So the audition process. This is probably everyone's favorite process to learn about because it is very unique for every theater. We are a professional but non-union theater. We are 60 seats. Yet we still receive sometimes up to 400 submissions for a play. Last year, we had a 4-person play that received right under 400 submissions. We narrow those down to, well, we only have this date and this many hours. So anywhere between 80 to 100 people to see out of those 400 submissions. They come in, they do a monologue or they do a song that's anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds. Based off of that, the directors are the ones who go through and say, well, they fit this character, this one didn't, this one could be paired with this one, oh no. And then they lump them into about 15 to 20, sometimes 25 people into what we call callbacks, where they'll get parts of the script, parts of the music, and they'll come back with us and they'll come back a different day and they'll be paired together. And then we learn, yeah, it doesn't really make sense to have this person who's 6'7" and this person who's 4'9" as love interest because we just can't get them to meet in the middle. Little things like that we have to see them in person. Do they have chemistry? Do they get along? There's a lot of things that go into this pairing. Do they look like siblings? There's a lot of fun things that go into the callback round. But outside of that, we go down to our main cast and understudies that get hired. And then I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. There we go.
It sounds fine for us.
Okay, great. Just wanted to double check. So out of that main cast, we have our main cast. Last year we had collected stories, had 2 main casts and had 2 members of our understudies. So that was 4 people total out of a couple hundred who submitted. And that is a lot. And I know there's other companies who do big, we call them cattle call auditions. They're not really nice to say, but that's the term that has been used over the course of the years, where you'll have a big room like this and you'll have hundreds of people walk through, or maybe even thousands in a day, and they'll pop on stage and do it and head off, and you'll base your whole season. We try to do each production has their own auditions because every show for us is very unique. And we'll need everything from last year we had Ripcord where it took place in a senior home, 2 ladies who lived and had a competition to get the best bed in the room. It was great. But we had everything from 2 women who had to be 60 to 70 plus, everything down to people who have to look like they're 17, 18. So we have to vary it up with our casting process. So that's a little bit about the audition process and the casting. Once we have that, we lock them down, we have contracts, we have all of those fun things, and we move on to our rehearsal process, which is typically about eight weeks long. We rehearse for our place because we're so small. We actually have our rehearsal spaces in the basement, so we can't rehearse when there's a play going on upstairs. So we rehearse 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday mornings for 8 weeks leading up to the show. And then in that process, you have everything from actors who learn their lines, the blocking, which is how do they move across the floor, how do they interact, intersperse everything from transitions into there, who's taking what off, who's moving this, who's doing that. And then once you get through all of those things, you move into what we call tech rehearsal, which is where you bring all of those design elements and all those designers come in and they put together what they've worked on with the actors, and it looks very chaotic for a minute. I'm just coming off of was today Tuesday, right? So Saturday and Sunday we had about 20 hours of tech rehearsal for our upcoming show, Rooted, where we had everyone in the room together, working through lights, through sound, and just trying to make everything come to life the way we envision it. Because as a director, they say if you can get half of what you envisioned in your head on stage, you did a great job. So that's it until we get to opening night, and then we get to opening night, and you have a lot of different looks for our space. So I'm going to show you just a few little glimpses at some productions we've had over the last couple of years, just to show you how varied we like to do things in our shoebox of a space. So it's a Wonderful Life from 2022 is our last year that we did this. It was our 10-year tradition for this show. So it was very different, very unique. Everything from Frankenstein, where we turned our stage into a ship. It was a very fun production. The puppet I can't say enough good things about him. I also have to say enough good things to not be as scared every time I see him. And then we have The Revolutionist last year, which was one of my favorite shows that we've done in the space. It was just a great cast too. And then Collected Stories from last year. So that's all we do, right? As a theater. Not necessarily. So I always like to say, and maybe this is me on the administrative side, there's about another 2/3 of the business that go into supporting that production process. And don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with going in as long as that past section. So we have our box office that we have to operate and run, everything from the technology to answering phones to website maintenance, all of those fun things that go into answering emails, all of that. So that's a part of the business that goes into supporting that. Marketing. Whew, that is one big job right there. So we also have our bar that we use. For those of you who don't know, we used to be BYOB before the pandemic. We tried for years to get a liquor license, but we only were allowed BYOB. But during the pandemic, the village of Glenview was so nice, and they worked with us, and they said, yes, we are going to give you a liquor license. So now we have our bar. It's right there. It's open an hour before shows. It's great. It's a fun time. And we hope you'll join us. And then our facilities, not a lot of theaters own their own space here in Chicago. We have our own space, which is great, but it requires a lot of upkeep, a lot of cleaning, a lot of all that, or else it'll turn out to look just like that. And just a fun story as I'm with this. I can't remember, I was talking with someone right before the show who said they came to see some of our outdoor shows, which this is actually during the summer of 2021, our set of Tally's Folly, that we had these lovely Adirondack chairs that were laid out there. And they were great. It was a fun time. We had a 20 by 30 stage we built, which is double the size of our indoor space. We had scaffolding towers that we had with lights hung and generators drawing power. And we had 100 Adirondack chairs out there, which is great. We took the idea from a different theater out in, I think, Arizona. But the thing about that is we learned that not everyone can get in and out of Adirondack chairs super easily. But it was a great time. But it goes into, what did we do with those Adirondack chairs afterwards? We had to store them ourselves and had to figure out how to move them. So facilities, tying that back in. And then board and strategy. That's another big part. That's mostly what my job is working with the board, working with strategy on what are we doing next, not just programmatically, but how do we broaden our impact? How do we work with the community? How do we get people in our door? How do we make a difference? Theater is here not just to entertain. It's here to make us think. It's here to move the needle. It's here to make a difference and be a part of life. So all of that goes into board strategy and planning, and how do you be financially savvy? How do you do all those things? So that's a lot of, again, that's why I say it's 2/3, because that's probably where I spend a lot of my energy and time. And then fundraising, as a nonprofit theater like Oil Lamp is, Traditionally, the metrics are between 50 to 60% earned revenue, so your ticket sales and bar, and then the rest is contributed revenue, everything from donations, grants, all of those things. We're working on that, and it really is a big balance, especially as a 60-seat house. So we spend a lot of time and energy into those things. And this is a picture from Gift of the Magi last year. Did anyone see that production? All right, we got one, we got two. All right, three. Perfect. It was our holiday show for last year. It was great. And then after that, we also have our other auxiliary programming, speakeasy nights, women on Wednesdays. We started doing rentals this year as well. So all of that with two full-time, two part-time staff. We stay very busy, but we have a great group of board members and volunteers, or lamplighters is what they're called, who keep us moving. So get involved with the theater. So come and see a show with us. We have Rooted coming up. It opens, previews start on this Thursday, actually. And then our official opening is on Saturday night. It'll be a great time. This production is an offbeat comedy. It's about a woman who lives in a tree house and gets a cult following outside of her door, her treehouse, and it kind of grows and grows beyond her control. And it's very interesting to see what happens with this production. It's a Chicago premiere as well. We're working directly with the playwright for licensing, which is great. It's our first premiere of any kind, which is fantastic for us. After that, we have a passionate World War I romance called Mary's Wedding. It is beautiful. It is a great show. After that, that happens in May through July 14th, right there. And then after that, we are bringing back our musical. The musical's in the fall this year. It is called First Date. It is fun. It is great. It is moving. But that one starts in September and runs through October. So after that, we have A Christmas Carol, which is coming up. It's a very different version than what you are used to seeing, so be excited about that. And then yours truly is going to be the director for that, so come on out for that as well. It will make me feel good. But if you're interested, we do have a bunch of group rates, so if you have group, you want groups you want to come out and see, we have some tickets that are $8 off for groups of between 10 and 19, or $10 off of 20 or more people. Same thing with senior living. There's actually even more discount. So $10, $16 off. But it's just ways that we can get bigger groups in and things like that and have a good time. But also, I've been asked this a lot of the events that I've spoken at is, do you have events and fundraisers and things like that coming up? We do have some fundraisers coming up. We have our casino night coming up this May 10th. That's actually about to go public this week, so you are getting a glimpse first and foremost to that. But you can win a weekend trip to Las Vegas and come hang out with us. I think that's the big thing. And our winter gala, we had our first ever gala last year. It was a blast. This year, we're doing it on a larger scale, and it's going to be a great time. Or if you want to become involved in other ways, we have ways of becoming involved, such as board members, or becoming a volunteer, such as our lamplighters. About our lamplighters, which we have one here in the audience today. Yep, they can serve and help do fundraising events, but we also have different outreach committees, such as senior outreach, women's outreach, and community partnerships. So that's just a little bit about different ways to become involved with Oil Lamp. But really, I would love to see, especially those who have never even heard of us, to come see a show. It's a great time. It's a fun time. And you get complimentary cookies. So that's it for the gist of my presentation. With that, I think we can open it up for any questions.
Thank you. We'll give you a big hand for that. We have a microphone that's going to go around the auditorium, and then I'll cover any that come from Zoom questions.
All right. I think we have one right here in the back.
Well, we have one right now.
Oh, perfect. Look at that. So,
Jay, that was good.
thank you.
I've been to quite a few programs at the Oil Lamp Theater, And is the lamplighter back here the one who's outside with the umbrella in case it's raining? That's a different lamplighter. Okay. It's really the Chicago premiere of Roots. Has it had a world premiere somewhere else, or?
It has. It had started in Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park was its first production.
And so you know something about it, and so it's not a big chance. You know what it's going to be. You've seen it.
I have not personally
Okay.
seen it, but it is. It just it's a little over a year old.
Okay. And I just one little story. One of the shows I saw this last year, in the first row. My wife and I and whoever we go with like to sit in the first row. You're practically feet away from the stage. And one of the shows, we had to save the seat next to us because the actor was actually sat down in the seat next to me. And that was very interesting. So anyway, I highly recommend the Oil Lamp Theater. It's a great place to go.
Well, thank you so much. And we try to make the audiences feel like they're a part of it in a lot of different ways. And just the venue layout itself makes you feel like you're there in the world, on the stage, in the play with them. So it's great that you got to sit next to one of the cast members as well.
We've been to several of your productions, and they're all very good. And we're all very impressed with the professional, accomplished actors who appear in your performances. In other words, people that have done television, they've done major. So we're very impressed with that. And we do enjoy your theater. One thing, though, you may want to do is this an aside. Okay, sorry. One of the things that I would ask you is an aside. We've been to other productions at your theater and others, and one of the people on the staff is somebody they call the intimacy captain.
Mhm.
Can you describe very briefly what what that person would do in terms of a production?
Absolutely. That's something that has become more prominent in the last 5-10 years in the arts industry and TV and film as well. And that is someone just like you would have a stage, someone who's teaching stage choreography for combat. If there's a kiss or something that is a vulnerable situation, you want to bring in an intimacy coordinator who, one, make sure the room and the actor and the artist all feel safe in that space, because you're in there. I'm up here with many of you watching, and it's a different experience, and it needs to be controlled in some way in order for me to feel safe is the best way to put it. Because there's been over the years a history of abuse or negligence or things like that. So it's providing, for one, a space where people feel heard, seen, but for two, it's to sit there and say, all right, so this moment where you come together, you are going to tilt your head this way, you're going to brush the hair this way, and you're going to pull in with your left hand and make this kiss. And it's going to look the way we want it. It's going to tell the story in the way we want it. Because what can happen is when you don't do that, for one, it's not a safe environment. But for two, it can lead to some tragedies. I've, back in my earlier career, didn't have a choreographer for that, and someone decided to turn their head and hit my nose, and I spent the rest of the act bleeding. So things can happen when you don't have that control in it. So everything we do in a production is very controlled and is very safe, and everyone, and especially at Oil Lamp Theater, we want to make sure everyone who walks through our door, whether it's an artist or a patron, feels like they are in a situation that is controlled and well thought out.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you use the Chicago Saints for ushering?
We do, and let me take this moment to plug out the Saints. The Saints are fantastic. Who's here who's not familiar with the Saints? Okay, maybe one or two hands in the audience. The Saints are a volunteer organization where they volunteer to usher at venues across the city. I know some people who told me they saw 200 shows last year as a Saint. Please, they are the lifeblood of Oil Lamp Theater. They're such a big thing for us in so many theaters across Chicago. If you have not heard of them, please check them out. Sign up, become an usher, see a bunch of shows. There's a lot of wonderful people who work there, and we do. Thank you. That was a great question.
I I really would like to congratulate you, the Oilem Theater, the people who work there on stage, behind in the bar. If you haven't been there, it is it's like being in your living room at home. It is so homey, nice, kind. You don't even think you are a quote customer. It is I cannot, you have to see for yourself. I like to go with my tennis buddies, and we always have a great time, and we do it for quite some years. So congratulations. And unfortunately, it's the best kept secret on the North Shore. So please, please spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I think is fun is that we get to sit next to somebody different every time. I'm still trying to figure out that last show we saw with those women yelling at each other. But
Collected Stories, was that the one?
I guess it was. I don't know. That there was a baby, there was a people divorced. I don't know. It was a mess. But we sit somewhere different every time, which is it's fun. At the Lyric, we sit in the same seats every time. At Northbrook Symphony, we sit in the same seats every time. But Oil Lamp, we never know where we're going to sit. We just know we have a guaranteed seat, period. Like we're going to see Rooted on the 24th of this month, and I have no idea where we're going to sit, but we'll get a seat somewhere.
We do have subscriptions, and we do have parties who do block out an entire row or sometimes 2 rows just so they know who they're sitting next to. So if you ever want to have that stability before again, please let us know. We can help you out with that.
With 60 seats, they're all great.
I see maybe 40, 50 live performances, and I'm not a saint a year. And your performance of Collected Stories, I thought was really remarkable. It was really professional. We were interested all the way through. The actors were great. And it was something different we hadn't seen before. So you really have done a great job on some of the things.
Well, thank you. We tried to make a varied season. So I'm glad you took that away.
I'm not sure I understood this. When I go into my living room, I can choose my own seat. So with 60 seats, do you have reserved seating, or is it you sit wherever you wish to?
We do have assigned seating
You do have
in our
assigned
space.
seating.
Yes. Just sometimes, depending on if you have a flex pass or however you do your seats, some of the preferred ones might be taken.
What is the exact address of your place?
It is 1723 Glenview Road, Glenview, Illinois, 60025.
Are your plays oriented toward different audiences? Are there some plays that we could take young people to? Some plays that would be more adult in nature?
Right now, we don't have any specific plays for youth. That is something that we are trying to work on. I actually spent 5 years before this as the managing artistic director of a national touring educational theater. So that's very near and dear to my heart. So we're working on that down the pike. We do have, I think it's August 10th this year, we'll be doing a free showing at the public library of Treasure Island. So we'll have that, but nothing in our space at current.
Some of your things are adult oriented.
Most of our things are adult oriented, and then we try to do subsects within that. Okay, this will appeal for the people who are more intellectual. These appeal to people who just like comedy, and then we try to parse it from there.
Where do you get your people from? Your actors, your stage managers, because your plays are these 4 weeks or 5 weeks, these 6 weeks. Where do you find the kinds of people who have that flexibility in their lives that they can fit into your schedules?
Well, unfortunately and fortunately, the Chicago theater scene is comprised of artists who mostly have day jobs and who do this on the side as their career, as their passion. So with that being said, a lot of our artists and a lot of our designers, they come from all over. Mostly they come from the city itself. But we do have people who come all the way from, we've had people from South Bend, Indiana come in and drive in for every show, which is wild to me because that was during a winter show a few years back. So we have people from pretty much all over the area.
You mentioned you have 8 weeks of rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
I assume you have to compensate those people for those 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So the economics must be pretty pressuring to.
It is,
Yeah.
yes. That's why we put an emphasis on fundraising at the end, because it really is what keeps us sustainable. Because it's the thing about Oil Lamp Theater, for the reason why I joined on in March of 2020 was this organization always puts our artists, our people first. So we make compensation a high priority every step of the way. So that's a big thing about our organization. Especially when compared to a lot of other storefront theaters across the Chicagoland area. So we really stick out in that area.
Do you ever offer a before or after discussion on any of your plays?
We do. So we're trying to put one together for Rooted right now. We like to call it our Spark series. So we're trying to spark conversation, but we had 1 or 2 for Collected Stories, some post-show talkbacks. But we find those to be very, very valuable. And then hopefully our community partnerships is going to work committee with our Lamplighters. We're hoping not just have it with the cast, but also bring in, like with Rooted, do we have any environmental, organizations who would want to come in and have a conversation afterwards about those kind of parallel topics? So those things, be on the lookout for those parts as well.
How long have you been in this space?
Since 2012.
2012. Do you have parking?
We do. We have parking on the left side of the building right there. We have a whole parking lot, and actually they just opened it up to follow around the back side of us as well.
Yeah, I know all that. It's just I thought it'd be.
That is accurate.
Hi, I'm a member of the Saints organization, and I just want you to know that we all love your productions. And unless you're a night owl and up at 12:01 when all of the productions are released for you to sign up for, if you wait till 8 o'clock the next morning, Oil Lamp theaters are all gone because everybody wants to go see them. Their productions are professional and just amazing. And the space, as people have said, is so intimate. You do feel like you're in someone's living room, and the actors are right in front of your feet as they're doing their performances. And I felt like Frankenstein was going to attack me when he was coming over towards the front of the stage. It's really a wonderful organization. So I encourage you to go.
Thank you.
Morning, Jay. Jay,
morning.
I have a question for you. Do you ever at auditions feel heartbroken? And I'll tell you why I ask. I've sat in on many auditions for two large musical theaters here in this area, and they cut off their auditions at 750 applicants for about 6 positions. And when I'm sitting and watching the actors audition, almost all singing, they're supremely talented and very eager, and they have less than a chance out of 100 of getting chosen. It's like watching the movie Dead Man Walking, and I feel heartbroken every time that happens.
I concur. It is very heartbreaking, especially with how long we've been around and our relationships we grow with our actors. A lot of the times we'll have actors come back and audition for us who we know they spent 7-8 weeks doing performances on our stage. We get to know them, but maybe they're not the right fit for this show, and it breaks your heart. Or someone who you're just rooting for from the get-go. It really does. It's a very interesting process where you have to separate that personal piece. It's a very unique part of the business, honestly.
Have any of your actors graduated to other theaters in Chicago or New York? Have they gone on to glory? Otherwhere?
As far as glory, I'm not sure. I think if you're thinking like Broadway standards, not that I'm familiar with at this time, at least not anyone in my knowledge from 2020 to now. But we have had people who go and do productions all over the country as well. So we have people who go far. I haven't met anyone yet who's been to like that Broadway level yet, but definitely the talent is there. It's just a lot of competition.
Jay, I know that you are very involved in reaching out to the community and local small businesses nearby. Could you talk a little bit about that effort? And also, I'm curious, does Oil Lamp have a relationship with other theaters like Writers Theater? I mean, do you all talk to each other, try to, encourage people? I mean, most of us love the productions at all the theaters and like to go to all of them. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So part one is just reaching out to the community and being part of that. That's a big thing about, when I took over, I said, well, this is so ingrained into this community. It needs to have a bigger thumbprint here. So for one, we're trying to increase visibility, get more people in the doors. We're trying to, we started our Women on Wednesdays series just to get more people through there. We partner with local artists too. For every show, every production has a different visual artist who's hanging on our walls. So we do a lot with that, and we're trying to ramp that up. We have our community partnerships outreach committee, which is really trying to take that to the next level and work with other nonprofit organizations. So there's a lot we're trying to do in that with those efforts as well. Outside of that, as far as a second part of that, can you remind me of that? Other theaters. So for one, we're part of the League of Chicago Theaters, which is great. It's a great resource for us. But we try to stay in contact with the other theaters around the area as well. We don't have any formal meetings set up. We just reach out when we want to talk or run into each other every now and then at different events and different shows.
Based on your question before, most of us have never been into auditions or anything. Describe what that's about. You said they do 90 minutes, but how many people are doing the choosing, or who are they, or how does that work? We're just curious.
Yeah, so typically you'll have in the room, you'll have a table sitting there, and you'll have, for us, depending on the show, we'll have about 3 people in the room. You have your director, who's the primary decider of yes, this person, no, maybe we'll think about it, creating those piles. And you'll have your artistic director, essentially, someone who has probably long-term knowledge of, I want to keep this person. Oh no, they almost burned down the theater last time. And you'll have probably someone else there who's in the room that the director trusts. And you'll have a person who's at the front desk who's checking people in as they come in, saying, hey, my name is this. Great, you're here. We don't have to worry about you're here for your time, your slot, because everyone's given about 3 minutes for the minute they walk into the room to they get across the middle of the stage, say their name, the piece they're doing, do it, and then they're out the door. So they have 3 minutes max. And then outside of that, you also have someone who's a runner or a greeter, so who's outside the door, who takes their headshot, comes in, drops it off the director's desk and says, hey, this is so-and-so, this is their paperwork, just going back and forth. So it's a pretty nifty situation.
Who asked the question about audition and feeling badly? Okay. As I was telling Jay before introducing him, personally, I produced and directed television commercials, radio commercials, corporate films for over 50 years. The very first commercial that I produced, however, I was in a casting session. I was there as a producer, there was a director, there was the client. Sometimes there's many clients. That's a whole different category. But the whole thing is, I felt awful. I'm sitting there playing God. These people are coming in and doing their thing about, a potential role in the commercial. And afterwards, I was talking to the director who had had many years in the business, and he said, Bob, just remember this one thing. I said, what? Nobody's holding a gun to their head telling them to do this. And it sounds very cold to approach it that way, but you have to learn to separate that. You know, most of you probably will never be in that position, but if just asking that question, you know, about the empathy you have towards people who are performers. So remember that nobody's forcing them to do it.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, so my last company, we used to go to this conference in Memphis every year called UPTA, and you'd see 1,100 people in a weekend hop on stage, do 90 seconds, and then hop off stage, and then you'd see a couple hundred people a day, and then party at night with the other theaters across the country. It was great. But the one thing that we all had to keep telling everyone who's there, who's nervous and shaking because there was a lot of kids right outside of college, is everyone in this audience is rooting for you to be good. We want you to blow it out of the park. We want you to be the best thing we've ever seen. So know that we're on your side.
Are there any plans for you to expand?
Yes, we have some dreams, some goals that I can't go into full detail right now, but we have reached kind of place where we're hitting our mark with our audience sizes. And we look at what can we do as a theater, how can we make an impact, and we see an opportunity to make a bigger impact. And we're in negotiation and talking about how we can accomplish that.
If I may ask, what is your annual operating budget?
Our annual operating budget is right around 500.
Jay, you answered a question. Has anyone made it big, sort of, so to speak? And it's plenty of time for that. I'm not familiar as much with Oil Lamp. I am going to be after hearing your presentation. But I am familiar, and many of us are, because we're twice as old as you, with the organic theater, if that rings a bell, in Chicago. But 3 actors that came out of that, one is my brother, Joe Mantegna. Another is Dennis Franz, who made $1 gazillion on NYPD. Meshach Taylor, maybe someone that you don't know, but that may have been just 3 out of 7 actors who had day jobs. There are celebs who come from who knows what, but actors do come out of the small theaters. And the organic theater, how many are familiar with the organic theater? They may have had 60 seats as well. And their actors all had day jobs, and some of them became actors in bigger ways, and I'm sure so will yours. But a question that I have is this: how much does what happens in America drive the content that you use? How much do you go into looking at what's going on and then making decisions based on that? And how much does that motivate you?
I will say that draws me back to, we were talking about selecting scripts and the why now aspect. Okay. We want to ask questions that people are curious about, and typically that aligns with what's going on in the world. However, we're not known for being a very, I guess, for lack of a better word, political theater. Instead of having that purview, we want to create conversations. So what we do instead is we try to find shows that bring connection, that invite discussion. So that's kind of what we do when we look at that. So we say, what can we do that still fits with who we are and our mission? Because that's very important. But how do we have a conversation that people seem to be interested in wanting to have right now?
Okay.
So it's an interesting line to draw, because you have the theaters out there who are really great at that. Those kind of, we have this big issue going on, let's throw everything at it, like your Steppenwolfs and stuff like that, which they have their place. We're a different theater, and our audiences for the last 12 years have a different taste of who we are. So we're trying to have more of those discussions.
And the last question is, how would you rate Chicagoland as a theater town? What's your view of it?
It's the reason why I moved here. And just so you know, I'm from Florida originally, so that's a big deal.
What makes it so different? And I imagine you're feeling in a positive way.
Absolutely. It's the creativity that lives here. And it's the community. people really care about each other and they're rooting for each other and they want everyone in the part of this community to do well, to do good.
We have a couple more questions. I'm going to go ahead, Pat.
Based on Ron's question, that made me think that with the Oscars, they now have criteria and categories with which to be included in to be a nominee. They have to, check off all these boxes of inclusivity and equity. So I'm wondering, with a small theater, are you having to, fill all those roles? You have to have so many, women, LGBTQ.
Yeah, we will always strive to be bigger and better with our DEI and all of our efforts for inclusivity. We here on the North Shore we're trying to take steps every step with everything we do with our company, and we have that at the forefront of our decision making, which is great.
Yeah, a quick question. Back in the 60s, we lived in Philadelphia area, and within our area around Swarthmore, there were 7 or 8, we called them amateur theaters. They charged for them, but all the actors were just amateurs, like me. I was in probably 3 or 4 of those theaters in many, many plays and musicals. And do we have those here, or are that all gone? Is that history?
Oh, those are still around as well.
Yeah, community theater.
Community theater, yes. And you have Chicago, before the pandemic, there was around just under 300 different theater companies around the Chicago land area. And many of those did not make it through, but there's also been a creation of a bunch of new companies, organizations, people who didn't have a company before, or maybe merging companies. It's been an interesting time. And I'm hoping for a big resurgence here.
I'm going to I just told Ron, I'm going to tell a personal story about him. About 60 years ago, he and I were beginning copywriters in the advertising department at Montgomery Ward. And we were having lunch one day, and there were about 3 or 4 of us there. And he said, "Get this. My kid brother says he's going to be an actor. And he's got this part in a play where they take their clothes off." Anybody remember what that was? Yeah. Further conversation. You're not done yet. Further conversation. I keep telling my brother, "Get a real job. You're never going to amount to anything doing this." I'm not done. When people are asking you about anybody coming out of your theater that have made it big in the entertainment world, in the commercial world, I used to do a lot of work up in Minneapolis. Minneapolis is a fabulous theater town, and you probably know that too. A lot of surrounding communities that have theaters, particularly in the winter, they don't have anything to do. So they go to the theaters. But some actors and actresses that I worked with over the years in commercial work, you might recognize. Well, here's one name, I think. Lonnie Anderson. Yeah. Lonnie Anderson, before she became the bombshell, the blonde bombshell on WKRP in Cincinnati, was an excellent on-camera spokesperson. She did very, very good voiceover work. She was a brunette. That's just one of many that came out of that, the pool up there.
Before no, I guess it's still alive. Adding on to that story, Brother Joe invited, because we lived with Grandma and Grandpa, invited Grandpa to see Hair. And Grandpa was really, really, probably my age now when he went to see Brother Joe in Hair. And afterward, when we got home, he and Joe got home, he said, "Well, Grandpa, what did you think?" He goes, "Oh, I think you got a pretty nice body." But then we said, "Grandpa, were you just looking at Joey?" And then he just smiled. JB, we're going to thank you, but please don't leave because there is a sponsor that our president would like to make an announcement on. And maybe you do that now and then we'll see if there's any of the last minute questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. We did have a slight communication error. We have a sponsor, Liz Starman from the Adlerata Villa.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to sponsor your event. I know I've seen some of you before. If you're going to the gala, you'll see me there, as well as the golf outing later in the year. We love all the programs the North Shore Center offers to all of you. Adlerata Villa, we're in Wheeling. We're a Catholic organization sponsored by the Franciscan Sisters of Chicago. We're rental. We have independent living apartments, assisted living, memory care, short-term and long-term nursing. We are under construction this year. So if anyone hasn't been there in a while and you want to come, put it on your calendar, come visit us in August. We'll hopefully be done and have some open houses. So I'm at the table out here if anyone has any questions, and thanks so much.
Jay, thank you so much for a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week.